Welcome, brave souls. I am your guide into the realm of the unknown. Here, among these ancient tombstones and whispering trees, we uncover the most intriguing and terrifying stories that will send shivers down your spine. Encounter the supernatural in real life. Each story will transport you to a world where fear reigns and the line between the living and the dead blurs. Are you ready to face your fears? Let the stories begin. The town of Willow Creek was quaint, with an air of nostalgia clinging to its cobblestone streets and Victorian houses. For years, it had been a peaceful place, but a legend haunted its history, an abandoned church on the outskirts, where the catacombs of St. Mark's lay beneath, dark and undisturbed. It began with a dare, as many stories of teenagers do. Josh, the most adventurous of the group, was always chasing the next thrill. He had heard stories about the catacombs from his grandfather, who warned him never to go near the old church. The tale was clear. Darkness and death awaited anyone foolish enough to enter. But Josh was curious and determined to debunk the myth. He told his friends he was going to explore the catacombs and dared anyone to join him. Most declined, but his best friend Sam felt obligated. They made a plan to meet after school, but Josh never showed up. At first, his friends thought he had bailed, but when he didn't answer calls or texts, concern grew. Sam, Emma, the quiet artist, and Jake, the skeptic, decided to search for him. 3 days had passed since Josh's disappearance. The small town was on edge. Posters of his smiling face were plastered everywhere, and his parents were frantic. Sam, Emma, and Jake knew they had to go where no one else dared. The catacombs. Armed with flashlights, ropes, and a sense of dread, they made their way to St. Mark's. The church was a looming silhouette against the twilight sky, its Gothic spires reaching out like skeletal fingers. The entrance to the catacombs was hidden beneath a stone slab in the graveyard, just as Josh had described. With a deep breath, Sam pushed the slab aside, revealing a dark hole descending into the unknown. The air grew colder as they descended, the light from their flashlights flickering against the damp walls. The silence was oppressive, broken only by their breathing and the occasional drip of water. They walked for what felt like hours, the tunnels winding like a labyrinth. "Do you think he's okay?" Emma's voice trembled, echoing in the narrow passage. "He has to be," Sam replied, though doubt gnawed at him. "Josh is tough." They reached a junction and split up to cover more ground. Sam and Emma took the left path, while Jake ventured right. It wasn't long before Emma screamed. Sam turned to find her staring at a figure in the shadows. He shone his flashlight and gasped. It was Josh, or what was left of him. His eyes were wide open, frozen in terror, and his body was unnaturally twisted. Before they could react, a chilling whisper filled the air, and the temperature dropped further. Shadows danced on the walls, taking on nightmarish shapes. Emma clung to Sam, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to find Jake and get out of here," Sam said, pulling her along. They retraced their steps but couldn't find the junction. It was as if the tunnels had changed. Panic set in, and the whispering grew louder, more insistent. Jake, meanwhile, found himself in a chamber lined with ancient tombs. He felt a presence watching him, and when he turned, he saw a group of figures in dark robes, their faces obscured by hoods. They whispered his name, promising safety if he followed. Against his better judgment, he took a step forward, then another, until he was surrounded. Sam and Emma stumbled upon a hidden room filled with symbols and old relics. In the center was an altar, and on it lay a book bound in human skin. Emma, driven by an inexplicable urge, opened it. The pages were filled with dark incantations and warnings. They realized the catacombs were more than just a burial site. They were a sanctuary for an ancient occult group. The book spoke of rituals performed centuries ago to harness dark powers, and it needed souls to remain bound. Josh had unknowingly triggered a ritual, and now it wanted more. As they read, the shadows closed in, and they heard Jake's screams echo through the tunnels. Determined to save Jake and escape, Sam and Emma followed the screams. They found Jake in the grip of the cultists, his eyes vacant. Sam charged, but a hidden trap was triggered, and spikes shot from the walls, impaling him. Blood sprayed, and his body fell lifelessly to the ground. As Emma chanted, the cultists began to chant as well, their voices blending in a horrific harmony. Jake, disoriented, stepped back too far and fell into a hidden pit, his screams abruptly cut off as he was impaled on rusted spikes. Blood pooled around the spikes, the metallic scent filling the air. Emma, tears streaming down her face, continued to chant. The cultists turned their attention back to her, but with a final, desperate cry, she completed the incantation. The cultists screamed as the chamber shook violently and the walls began to crumble. Emma ran, barely escaping as the catacombs collapsed behind her. Emma woke up in a hospital bed, her body bruised and bandaged. The police had found her near the entrance of the catacombs, unconscious. She told them everything about the catacombs, the traps, and the cultists. They listened with skeptical ears, but couldn't deny the evidence of the bodies they found. Josh's and Sam's parents were devastated, and the town mourned the loss of the three boys. Emma became a recluse, haunted by nightmares and whispers in the dark. She knew the evil in the catacombs was not truly gone, only contained once more, waiting for the next foolish soul to set it free. Willow Creek returned to its quiet existence, but the legend of the catacombs grew. The townsfolk warned their children to stay away, but the lure of the unknown, the thrill of the dare, remained. The darkness still lingered beneath St. Mark's, a silent promise of death and terror for those who dared to disturb it. In a world where shadows hide more than just darkness, and whispers carry the weight of forgotten secrets, one story ends and another begins. The wind rustles through the trees, and somewhere a creaking door swings open, inviting the next brave soul to uncover the mysteries that lie just beyond the edge of reality. Prepare yourself, for the darkness is never truly gone, and the unknown is always waiting. What you are about to hear will test the limits of your fear as the next tale unfolds. It was a moonless night when Jamie, Sarah, Mark, and Lisa stood at the edge of the old McAllister house. The rumors had been circulating for decades, tales of disappearances, dark rituals, and strange noises. The house was an old, decrepit mansion that seemed to breathe out darkness from its broken windows and gaping doorways. Jamie, the cautious leader of the group, shone his flashlight on the crumbling facade. "Are we sure about this?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Come on, it's just a bunch of old stories," Sarah scoffed, brushing her dark hair behind her ear. She was always the skeptic, refusing to believe in anything she couldn't see or touch. Mark, ever the brave and impulsive one, pushed past Jamie and approached the door. "We've come this far. Might as well see what all the fuss is about." Lisa, the quiet and observant one, hung back, her eyes darting nervously. She had a bad feeling about this place, but she didn't want to be the one to back out now. They pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the dark, musty interior. The air was thick with the scent of decay and mildew, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. Jamie's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating dusty furniture and cobwebs. "Look," Mark said, pointing to a hidden door partially concealed by an old tapestry. "This must lead to the basement." They descended the narrow staircase, their footsteps echoing ominously. The basement was even darker, filled with strange symbols etched into the walls and old, broken furniture. Jamie's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows. "What's that?" Lisa whispered, pointing to a trap door in the corner. Mark pried it open, revealing a dark hole with a rickety ladder leading down. "Only one way to find out," he said, grinning. One by one, they climbed down into the underground catacombs. The air was colder here, and the walls were lined with ancient stones. Suddenly, the trapdoor above them slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the tunnels. "We're trapped!" Sarah cried, her voice echoing in the darkness. A sinister laugh echoed around them, and a tall, shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. His eyes glinted with malice, and his voice was cold and mocking. "Welcome, my guests. Only one of you will leave here alive. You must play my games to determine who that will be." Jamie stepped forward, trying to mask his fear. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" The man chuckled. "I am the keeper of this house, the guardian of its secrets. You have trespassed, and now you must pay the price." The first game was simple in its cruelty. The Darkness Challenge. They were led to a pitch-black room and told to find a key, hidden somewhere within. "But beware," the man warned, "for the darkness hides more than just the key." Sarah, who had always been afraid of the dark, hesitated. "I can't do this," she whispered, trembling. "You have no choice," the man said, his voice dripping with sadistic pleasure. They entered the room, the door slamming shut behind them. The darkness was absolute, and they could hear strange noises all around them. Sarah's breathing grew rapid, and she stumbled blindly. Suddenly, a scream pierced the darkness. Sarah's death was swift, but agonizing. She had wandered into a part of the room where the floor was covered with shattered glass and sharp metal spikes. In her panic, she tripped and fell, the shards cutting deep into her skin. Her screams were cut short by a particularly deep cut to her throat, and she bled out in the darkness, alone and terrified. "Sarah!" Jamie called out, but there was no answer. They fumbled around in the darkness, but the key was nowhere to be found. Finally, the door opened, and they stumbled out, shaken and terrified. The man's voice echoed again. "One down, 3 to go." The second game was the Unknown Challenge. They were led to a room filled with unknown horrors, hidden behind a thick curtain. "You must face what lies beyond," the man said, smiling cruelly. Mark, trying to maintain his bravado, stepped forward. "I'll go first." He pulled back the curtain and entered the room. The door slammed shut, and they heard Mark's screams. Inside, Mark found himself in a room with a circle of robed figures standing silently around a stone altar. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs and candle wax. Mark's initial bravado turned to horror as he realized he was surrounded by cultists. They began chanting in an ancient language, and Mark's heart pounded in his chest. One of the cultists approached him with a ceremonial dagger. Despite his struggles, they overpowered him, and he felt the cold blade pierce his flesh. Mark's screams echoed through the chamber as the cultists completed their ritual, draining the life from his body. They waited, hearts pounding, but he never emerged. The man reappeared, his smile widening. 2 down, 2 to go. The third game was the Death Challenge. Each of them would face a scenario that mirrored their deepest fear of death. Lisa, who had always feared dying alone and forgotten, was led into a small, cold room. The door closed behind her, and she was left in darkness. Lisa's death was the most emotionally harrowing. She found herself in a room with walls that seemed to close in on her, mirroring her fear of being trapped and dying alone. The room was filled with whispers and echoes of forgotten memories, and Lisa began to panic. She screamed for help, but her voice only echoed back at her. The air grew thinner, and she struggled to breathe. In her desperation, she clawed at the walls, her fingers bleeding. The whispers grew louder, overwhelming her senses. Lisa collapsed to the floor, her body shaking as she gasped for breath. Her final moments were filled with the torment of loneliness and the fear of being forgotten, and she died with tears streaming down her face. The man appeared once more, his eyes gleaming with malice. 3 down, 1 to go. Jamie, now the last one standing, was led to the final room. The man's voice was softer now, almost sympathetic. You have faced your friend's fears, but now you must face your own. Only then can you escape. Jamie entered the room, his heart pounding. The room was filled with mirrors, each reflecting his image. But as he moved, the reflections began to change, showing his deepest fears, losing his friends, failing to protect them, and ultimately, his own death. Suddenly, the man appeared behind him in the mirrors, his reflection towering over Jamie. "You are your own worst enemy," he whispered. "Face your fears, or be consumed by them." Jamie closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He turned to face the man, his fear transforming into resolve. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, his voice steady. The man laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "We shall see." Jamie's final challenge was to confront the man directly. The room transformed into a twisted version of the house, with walls closing in and shadows creeping closer. But Jamie stood his ground, facing the man with unwavering determination. As the shadows closed in, Jamie realized that the man was a manifestation of their collective fears, feeding off their terror. Summoning all his courage, Jamie stepped forward and reached out, touching the man's chest. The shadows recoiled, and the man began to dissolve, his form unraveling into darkness. With a final scream, the man vanished, and the room returned to normal. Jamie found himself standing at the entrance of the catacombs, the exit now visible. He stumbled out into the night, the weight of his friend's deaths heavy on his shoulders. He never spoke of what happened that night, but the memories haunted him. The house remained, a dark and brooding presence on the outskirts of town. Jamie knew that it held many more secrets, but he would never return. The man's voice echoed in his mind, a chilling reminder of the night he faced his darkest fears and survived. In the end, Jamie learned that the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create within ourselves, and that true courage comes from facing them head-on. But the cost of that knowledge was a price he would bear forever. So, brave souls, our journey in the shadows is coming to an end for tonight. We hope that these stories have stirred your imagination and given you goosebumps. Remember, the world is full of secrets waiting to be discovered, and the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than you might think. If you enjoyed today's stories and want to hear more creepy and unexplained, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you will be the first to know about new stories of horror and intrigue. Click on the bell icon so you don't miss a single creepy story. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some doors are better left unopened.